We live in a pretty amazing world. There is so much good out there, but there's also some things that can be kind of scary. So today we're going to talk about how to live in a world of abundance. So today we're going to talk about how to live in abundance. You know, when we look around at the world in which we live, we tend to believe that what we see is the way that the world really is. Unfortunately, that isn't true. What we see is what we choose to see or what we've been conditioned to see. But oftentimes the world can be completely different than what we really experience. So in life, there are two basic paradigms. And a paradigm, Steve Covey talks about it, is a paradigm is like the lens through which we see the world. If you put on a pair of rose-colored glasses, all of a sudden everything looks kind of rose-colored. If you put on some of those yellow tinted glasses, everything looks brighter. If you put on just regular sunglasses, everything looks a little bit darker. Well, have you ever experienced a situation where you're wearing sunglasses and you're driving or walking along and you're looking at something and it appears a certain way, and then you take the glasses off and it doesn't look the same? Well, in life, there are two basic paradigms through which we look at or we see the world. And those two basic paradigms are scarcity and abundance. So the paradigm of scarcity is all about lack. It's about not having enough time, not having enough money. You know, it's about I'm not tall enough, thin enough, handsome enough, smart enough. So it's all about lack, where abundance is a life of where there's more than enough of everything, of time, money, resources. So the question is, which paradigm is true? Or are they both true? What if it's the one that we choose and it's the lens that we choose to put on and to look at the world through? So I'm going to give you a couple of examples. There's a guy by the name of George Stratton that in the late 1800s, he created some goggles that when he put them on, it flipped everything upside down. So he did an experiment where he wore the goggles for about 7 to 10 days straight. And something interesting happened, that after about 7 days of wearing these goggles and everything being upside down, his mind flipped everything. And so all of a sudden, everything now looked right side up. So the world changed and became the world that he experienced, and his mind made that change. Robert Kiyosaki, in his books of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, he talks about the world in which we live, and that oftentimes the world is not different than what we see, but it's actually 180 degrees different than what we see. So kind of like those goggles where you're looking and it looks upside down, but then our mind flips it and makes it right side up. So our brain is pretty powerful, and it adapts to what our beliefs are about the world in which we live. So now what you see on the screen is a paragraph, and I want you to look at this paragraph, and I want you to count the number of F's. So the letter F is in Frank. I want you to count the number of F's that are in this paragraph. All right, so how many F's did you count? Some of you probably found 2 F's. Some of you may have found 3. Some may have found 4. Some of you may have found 5. And some of you may have found 6 F's. The correct number of letter F's is 6. So if you didn't count 6, I'm going to put it back up on the screen again, and I want you to look at that and see if you can find the F's that you missed the first time. Okay, hopefully all of you now have been able to find all 6 of the letters F. Now here's the question. The first time through, why did you see the number of F's that you saw? Why didn't you see all 6 of them? And for some of you, it may have been very difficult. And maybe there are some of you that still have not found all of the letters F. And here's the reason why. Our brain is set up where we have a filter. It's called the reticular activating system. And it's a filter in our brain because the subconscious part of our brain can process like 2 billion bits of information, but our conscious part of the brain can only process about 2,000 bits of information at a time. And so what happens is this filter filters out everything that it does not think is relevant for what we're looking at. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, it's a good thing because it does filter out a lot of the things that are not necessary, but sometimes that filter doesn't know what's necessary and not necessary, and so it may filter out some of the things that would be useful and helpful to us in our life. So just think about that, because again, the world in which we see and the way we see the world isn't always the way that it truly is. So coming back to this then, do we live in a world of abundance, or do we live in a world of scarcity? Is it true that there are not enough of some things? Here's another example. If we go back to the 1970s, when the oil crisis was going on, we had lines at the gas stations for gas. We had people filling up gas cans and taking them back to their vehicles and homes. And at that time, the belief was that we had about 30 years left of oil reserves before we would run out. Now, that was in the 70s. Now we're in 2018, and we have more oil today than we had in the 70s. How is that possible? Where at one time we only had enough to last us 30 years, and now we have more than we did, 50 years ago. Well, we've gained new technology. We've been able to access oil reserves that we couldn't access before, and we become better with our use of oil. And so is there really a lack of oil? What if we did run out of oil? What would happen then? The truth is, the real resource is what exists up here. It's our thoughts. It's our ability to create and to problem solve. And so any time in our life that we run into a situation where we are seeing a lack, it's not a lack of the resource, it's a lack of our ability to come up with solutions. It's a lack of creativity on our part. So this paradigm of scarcity is all about the emotion of fear. And if you think about it, when we are in a fearful mindset, it tends to constrict us or to shut us down. We tend to pull together to protect and to keep ourselves safe. This paradigm of abundance is all about love, and love is about expansion and growth. In order to live in abundance, we need to change our mindset. In about any situation in life, one person can look at it from one point of view and another person can see it from a different point of view. I may have $100 and be in this scarcity mindset of $100 is not enough. For somebody else, $100 may be enough money to use that to produce more and more and more money. So this scarcity mindset is all about consumption. So it's using up what I have, it's consuming what I have, and once it's consumed, it's gone. But abundance is about production. So it's about taking what I have and using it to produce more and more in our life. And if you look at this, there are examples around us in everything. You can take a piece of property and somebody will look at that piece of property and think that it's worthless or has no value. Another person will come in and see that piece of property and see all of the potential that can be made of that property, and they turn it into anything that creates value for other people. But it's because of that abundant mindset and them being able to see things that other people could not see. So the way to live in abundance in our lives is to be aware, first of all, that the way we see things isn't necessarily the way that it is. We need to pay attention to our thoughts and emotions that we're experiencing when we're looking at this situation. Is it based on fear or is it based on love? If we're fear-based, we can probably know that we're in a paradigm of scarcity, which again doesn't mean that that's what the world is that we live. It's just that's the lens that we're looking through. So we can change that. We can take that lens off. We can move to one of abundance and know that in order to find solutions, we need to just change our thinking in order to come up with new ideas. So we truly do, I believe, live in a world of abundance where anything is possible. There are solutions to all of the problems that we face in the world today. We just haven't figured them out yet. And part of this goes back to what we've talked about in other videos, the thoughts that we think. So the power of our thoughts, the power of the words that we use. Are we using words and thoughts that are holding us back and keeping us from accomplishing all that we can? Or are we using words of faith and belief and abundance? So I encourage you to look at your life, and are you living in abundance or are you living in scarcity? And if you're in scarcity, I invite you to change the lens and to live in a world of abundance and experience all that life has for us to enjoy. Thanks for joining us again today. Go ahead and subscribe to our channel, ring the bell, and come and visit us again.